Yeah, please.
Okay, sir.
Shall we start, Subhranshu?
Yes, sir. We can.
Good morning, everybody. It's really wonderful having gathered once again. Today, we all are honored to have two wonderful personalities with us. Let me welcome them. Honorable Chief Guest, Dr. Ashok Kumar, Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, NIT Rourkela. On behalf of English Support Mission, I welcome you to the webinar series on professional and proficiency development. And also, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to you that you have spared your precious time for us. Thank you so much, sir, once again. Now we have with us Honorable Resource Person, Professor Venkat Reddy, Department of Training and Development, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. I'm really delighted to welcome you, sir. Thank you so much for sparing your precious time to throw light on teaching listening skills. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Mr. Subhranshu Das to introduce today's chief guest and resource person. Over to you, Subhranshu.
Thank you so much, sir. And welcome everyone to the 13th session of English Support Mission. And without further ado, let me introduce our resource person and the chief guest for today. Our resource person for today is Dr. V.K. Venkat Reddy. He has been active in academic activities for close to 3 decades in teaching and training at all levels of language education, as well as language teacher education. He is an avid reader, an eloquent and effective presenter, a passionate learning facilitator, a compassionate counselor, a dynamic leader who worked in Afghanistan, Vietnam on the teacher education projects sponsored by the government of India. Dr. Reddy shines in the sphere of transcreation, training, teaching, administration, and more importantly, spreading positive energy in whatever he does with a dash of fresh humor. Donning multiple roles, Dr. Reddy is engaged in the creation and sharing of knowledge in and outside the confines of academia. Currently, he is a professor in the Department of Training and Development at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. We welcome you, sir, to today's session. The chief guest for today is Dr. Ashok Kumar Turuk. Dr. Ashok Kumar Turuk is a professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering from National Institute of Technology, Rourkela, having more than 20 years of teaching and research experience and more than 100 publications in journal and conferences. We're really blessed to have you in today's session, sir. Thank you. Over to you, Deepak, sir.
Now, may I request Honorable Chief Guest to bless us with his valuable words. Honorable Chief Guest, please.
I'm not sure whether my video is available or will be available to you or not.
Yes, sir.
Maybe some
available,
is available. So thank you, Mr. Verma, and thank you, Subhranshu, for introducing me to the participant. Let me also thank the founder and the co-founder of the English Support Mission for giving me this opportunity to talk to the participant. As I have been introduced, I am not a person from the literature. I am a person from the technology background. So naturally, I do not have a much knowledge, domain knowledge on this specific subject. Nevertheless, spending around 2 decades in the academic, I fully understand the importance of skills, the relevant skills that one should possess. If you look at in the academia, we very much discuss on a specific skill that we call it a soft skill, and soft skill is nothing, not a very specific skill. That is one skill. It's encompasses a set of skill, and we give a much thrust or importance to the soft skill of the students. Now, these soft skills are very essential when not only when one faces an interview for looking for a job, but these skills also is required for in a day-to-day life, whether you are in the office, in a job, or whether you are in the home, because it is include a set of skill where everyone should have a specific knowledge on the skill. Like if you're speaking to someone, then we should know how to speak, what to speak, and when to speak, what is the tone at which you to speak. So it encompasses many things. And if you look at from the recruiter point of views, the many recruiter also give importance of the soft skill of the job seekers. And many a times in my institute, when we talk to the recruiters, they complain of the soft skill of the student. Like when you face an interview, you start replying to the interviewer without listening. So today we'll be discussing on the listening skill and how important it is. I'm sure Professor Reddy will be the domain expert who will take you through the listening skill. Some of the soft skill which are very fundamental, and they are so fundamentals that they need to be learned at the foundation stage of the learning or a very early stage of our learning. And when you say it is a foundation stage, it is much before one reaches the standard of 8. But if you look at our school curriculum, you take any school curriculum or any university or the board exam, they never focus on the importance or never gives a thrust on the development of the essential component of the soft skill. To me, the fundamental skills which are integral part of the soft skill that must be learned at the foundation stage of learning are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. Now, just before the beginning of this program, where Mr. Verma was telling, you talk about 3 skills, reading, writing, and speaking. But nobody talks about the listening. And listening is so important. It's so important that you get frustrated when somebody does not listen to you, does not listen properly. Now, if you look at from a report, what I came to know that an adult spend on an average 70% of the time engage in some sort of communication. And it was also there in that specific report that on an average, 40% of time is spent on the listening, 30% for speaking, 16% reading, 9% writing. If you look at the listening, we have this, listening, speaking, reading, and the writing, and 40% time is spent on listening. So from the report, what I observed that a lot of time is spent on the listening. Therefore, it is so essential to develop the listening skill. Now, when you say it's the listening skill, it's listening and hearing. There are 2 different things. Hearing, if someone is capable to hear, it doesn't have a hearing problem, and any sound that enters, a sound can enter to ear, and you can hear something. But that is a physical phenomenon, that if there will be some noise somewhere, some sound will get into your ear. But that is not something what you call the listening. Listening is the ability to accurately receive a message, then interpret the message in the communication process. And the success of all effective communication lies on the listening. In other words, what we can say that the key to all effective communication lies on the listening. Now, without the ability to listen effectively, the messages are easily misunderstood. As a result, the communication breakdowns, and the sender of the message can easily become frustrated and gets also irritated. And it is being also observed that in the many a times, instead of closely following with the speaker, the people start formulating what to respond. That means without even listening, they start formulating what reply can be given to the speaker. And this is not a function of listening. We should try to focus fully on what is being said, how it is being said, in order to fully understand the speaker. And one of the there are many such problems are there for effective listening. And one of the problem to the effective listening is attributed to the difference between the average speech rate and average the processing rate. The average speech rate are between 125 and 175 words a minute, whereas our human brain can process an average between 400 and 800 words a minute. So if you look at, there is a great variations between the number of words that we can speak in a minute and the number of words the brain process within a minute. So what you'll do within in the remaining time. So it's a common habit for the listener to use the spare time while listening to think about other things rather than focusing on what the speaker is saying. This now has become a common trend for many of the employers to provide a training on the listening skill to their employees. Now, it is also found that a good listening skill can lead to better customer satisfaction, a greater productivity with fewer mistakes, and increased sharing of information that in turn can lead to creative and innovative work. So the effective listening is a very important skill that everyone should possess. And I'm sure the Professor Reddy and the English support mission will impart the necessary training to acquire this important skill. And I personally know the English support mission and is founder of their work among the underprivileged students in imparting the English training. I wish all the learners a great learning time ahead and all success to the English support mission in their endeavor. Thank you all.
Thank you so much for your valuable words. Thank you so much. Now I'd like to request Professor Reddy to switch over today's topic. Honorable Sir.
Okay, thank you, Deepak. And the ESM, English Support Mission, founders, co-founders, and today's chief guest, Professor Ashok Kumar, and other functionaries of the ESM. They have shown an important layer of human nature. They're very concerned, compassionate about certain sections of our society for whom English is a far cry, because English language today is not merely a language, but it's an asset to land the new wave jobs that came or have come our way on account of globalization, spread of information and communication technology, and the kind of job market that has opened up after we have become a member of the World Trade Center. After listening to Dr. Ashok Kumar, I in fact wanted to ask the organizers to propose a vote of thanks, because he has already done what I'm supposed to be doing about the importance of listening in our job spaces. Do you think there is anything left, Deepak, that I should continue after listening to Dr. Ashok?
Of course, we want to listen to you adding to Dr. Ashok.
Yeah, see, what Dr. Ashok had has spoken about is very valuable in terms of the role, in terms of the importance of, as he has already emphasized and underscored, the importance of listening in our job spaces, in our work spaces, and spaces that require responses. But my perspective here about the role of listening is very much narrow in terms of ELT, in terms of language learning in general, and ELT in particular. So when we talk about the role of listening in acquiring the L1 and the role of listening in learning the L2. L2 is second language. So in India, mainly English is considered second language, but it's not uniformly distributed across the spaces. In some places in our country, English is L1. In some homes and places in our country, English is L2. In some places, for example, the primary objective of English support scheme is to go and meet those people for whom English is a foreign language. So this is what Professor Vidyadhar Singh, V.D. Singh, my teacher, who wrote a thesis in 1973 for CIFL, he submitted. This is how he categorized the place and the role of English in our country in three different, it's first language in some homes, it's second language in some places, and it is also a foreign language in places where the English support scheme is concentrating, trying to meet the requirements of the tribal learners, requirement of the learners who are removed from the mainstream, going to various historical, various political reasons. So today's topic is teaching listening. And you might ask, what happened to off? Is it teaching of listening or teaching of grammar, or teaching of, when we teach in our university, we have this tradition of removing off. So teaching listening is as good as teaching of listening. That's the topic. And I would like to have this talk interactive. It's not one-sided. I will also seek your responses to these things, and it is not something very new. And this talk also dependent on certain preconditions. The precondition is that you must be an English teacher, a teacher of English, and you would have known the difference between teaching L1 and teaching L2. Or to put it in another way, learning L1 and learning L2. What are the requirements and how teaching or learning L1 is different from L2 is the precondition for this class. And then the rest we will gather by interacting with you, and based on what you respond, and that would be the ground, that would be the stage on which I would be interacting with you concerning teaching listening. And by the end of this interactive session, I'm underscoring this word interactive. You will learn, you're going to learn today what's learning a language and how different it is from learning a subject, and how different it is to learn a second language or a foreign language from the way we learn our first language, our mother tongue. Of course, mother tongue as a concept is controversial, but I'm using it in a very simple sense that it's our L1. Then what are the input and output skills? What do we do with a language? Perhaps with Odia, perhaps with Bengali, perhaps with Telugu, perhaps with English. What do we do with a language? Then what's the role of listening in language development? I'm not trying to say what is the importance of listening, but I'm trying to ask the same question, connecting that to language development. Procedure to conduct a listening class. So what is the procedure that a teacher has to follow in holding a listening class, in organizing a class of listening? And then I'll give you a model integrated session plan and how to execute that. And finally, if term permits, we can also have something called how to conduct an output skill based on the input that we receive, because input should not be held and the class should not be stopped without linking that to an output skill. Now, here we go. Now, the first question that I would like to ask is what's learning a language? This question, I'm not asking for myself. I'm raising this question to all the esteemed participants of today's webinar. And I gather from my friends Deepak and Lingaraj and others, Sudhamshu and Kopanchanan is not there. In fact, Arun is also my friend who actually roped me in to be part of this charitable, or this is a very important social work. Arun Bera, who was my classmate years ago, when we were really small, and we were small and more meaningful than today. We are big as a university. Arun Bera is now, he works for Satyasai Higher Education in Bangalore. Now, this question is for all of you. You can use your mics and give me, what's learning a language? What do you mean by learning a language? What do you mean by teaching a language? Because my concern is more on learning, not only teaching, because the purpose of teaching is learning. So therefore, it has to be, learner has to be highlighted. Learning has to be highlighted. I do not want a class called teacher-centered class. I do not want a class called learner-centered class, but we need both, because the objective of both congregating under one roof is learning. That's why I highlight this concept of learning-centeredness. Therefore, what's learning a language? Yeah, Nimayan boy? There are quite a few participants. Yeah, what's the meaning of learning a language, boy?
Okay. Shubhranshu, please allow everybody to unmute themselves.
Yes, sir, they can do. No problem. They can do that.
All of you have to come forward. I don't have, because this is what all of us do on a daily basis if you're a language teacher. But I'm trying to help you put this activity in a perspective, in a linear perspective. So what's the meaning of learning a language? Nimain.
Sir, if we are means, if you are able to means or share our thoughts and emotions with the language, then in my opinion that is learning a language.
Nimain, you're an English teacher, aren't you?
Sir.
So what's the meaning of learning a language for a teacher, or teaching a language for a teacher?
Sir, am I audible?
I'm not asking you to define, Nimain, the concept of language. What's the meaning of teaching a language? It's okay.
Teaching
yeah,
a language.
Talk about emotions and other things, right, Mr. Boy? Dr. Boy. Okay. Chitra Sen. I know. You can see some names. Chitra Sen,
Good morning,
what's the
sir.
meaning of learning a language?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Yes, sir. Sir, as per my knowledge, learning the language means we can understand it, and we can speak it and write it. Also, we can communicate with it.
All right.
That's the means of learning language.
Fine. Very briefly, Subhanshu, what's the meaning of learning a language?
So, as everyone said, it's the difference between like understanding the words and understanding the structure in which it is.
All right, that's the meaning of learning a language. Okay, meaning words and grammar, right? All right. Any other?
So may I?
Yeah, Deepak,
May
please.
I? Yes.
Yeah.
Sir, in my opinion, learning a language in real term is to acquire a language, that is to have competency in LSRW so as to produce required outcome.
Wonderful. Very nice.
Thank you so much.
LSRW also, it involves outcome. Anyway, so learning a language, Deepak says, learning this, Subhranshu, Chitra, and Boy also has announced. Anybody else has any other view? Dear participants?
Yes, sir. Namaskar.
Aapka naam?
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead.
Sir,
Me?
learning a language for the means to facilitate the language skills to the students.
Okay, to facilitate the language skills to the learners. Don't use the word, kindly don't use the word student is passive. Use the word learner.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Learner. And we can support the learners attempt to learn the language.
All right. Okay. Yeah, thank you. And now, all right. Any other? That's very nice.
Well,
Any other, please?
yeah. So my
It's an
understanding.
interactive session. Yeah, who is that?
Yeah, I'm Lingaraj speaking, sir.
Lingaraj, please
So
go ahead.
my understanding, it is to acquire the mechanism of language so as to reproduce it in our context, day-to-day life.
What's the meaning of mechanism, Dr. Raj?
If I say mechanism here is to understand the structures, the usages, we can say.
Okay. Structures and usages means vocabulary, right? All right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The mechanism,
Yeah.
language mechanism. Fine.
Right.
Very nice. Very nice. Any other?
Hello, sir.
Other participants?
Hello, sir. Good morning.
Very good
Hello.
morning. May I know who this is? Jagannath Patnaik. Yes, Dr. Patnaik.
Yes, sir. I think learning a language means getting comfortability in using language.
Yeah, comfortability, okay, in using a language.
Sir, getting fluency using language. When someone learns a language, if he is able to express his emotion, thought, and ideas properly, then we can say that that person has learned.
Yeah, very nice, very nice. Any other? That's a very good way. Nothing is useless, actually. Any other? Deepak Verma?
Sir, I'm
Deepak
done.
has already finished. Yeah, you already
Yes,
done.
sir.
Okay,
Sir.
I think others do not want to. I saw some people. Why is that we don't have lady participants today? Do we? They're not saying anything.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
We have.
All
We have lady
right.
participants.
Okay. Now let's go back to. Can you hear me? Deepak, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
we can hear you.
Somebody is trying to speak. Yeah, you can now mute all the mics. Okay. Now this is
Yes,
what we have. Yeah, learning a language has many people have answered differently, but you know, this is what Deepak said, Lingaraj and others also try to say, that learning a language is learning to listen, learning to read, learning to speak, learning to write, which means learning to language is learning the skills of the language. Language is a skill akin to learning to swim, learning to sing, learning to play, learning to walk, or learning to drive, for instance. These are all skills, and language learning is also a skill. And these are the things that we do, and we've got to do. If we are not doing, if we're thinking about achieving fluency, achieving accuracy in the language, learning to listen, learning to speak, learning to read, learning to write, which means L, S, R, W, but there is plus. The plus is also important. And every plus is a welcome. So language learning also has a plus, and that plus is here. Vocabulary. Vocabulary is words. Grammar, as Lingaraj Pradhan and also Subramsu say, words are important. Mechanism, language mechanism is important. That language mechanism is structure, and language mechanism, another important aspect is pronunciation, the way in which a word is produced orally using oral and nasal cavities. So therefore, this is the first and the foremost answer. If anyone ever asks you a question, as you are a professional, language teaching professional, what's the meaning of language learning? The answer is learning to listen, learning to speak, learning to read, learning to write, plus the aspects of the language. Vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. So how do we learn vocabulary? How do we learn grammar? How do we learn pronunciation? Are they separate from the skills? You will say no. Through listening, through reading, through listening, we reinforce the old words or we introduce new words, vocabulary. Through listening, we also either reinforce old rules of grammar or we can also introduce new rules. Through listening, we also facilitate pronunciation, which is absent when you teach reading. When you teach reading, we teach them old vocabulary, new vocabulary in the context of the old, new rules of grammar in the context of the old. But pronunciation is missing in the reading part because every reading in a language development as a skill has to happen silently. If you read aloud, that's not reading, that's speaking. Speaking using a script. Making a speech using a script. Resorting to verbalize the narrative of a script. So loud reading should not be mistaken as reading. Loud reading actually is speaking using, kind of a speaking using the script. Now, the first question is answered comfortably. And that answer is that when we learn a language, we learn how to listen, how to speak, how to read, how to write, plus the aspects of the language, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Now, if you look at another question, what are the input skills and output skills? All four skills we have already known. Mr. Boy, have you understood the four skills?
Yes, sir.
What are those, sir?
LSRW, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, sir.
Right, wonderful, very glad. Plus, we have the aspects of the language, the elements of the language. Now, what are the input skills and what are the output skills of the four that we have just got hold of? Input. What's the meaning of input? Anybody? Input means give something new. Okay, you give something to the learners. What do we give through the input skills? The input skills, what do you think are input skills? Input skills are listening. Input skills are
Listening and reading.
Input skills are reading. So when we input, you give something. You give them content. The content is vocabulary. The content is grammar. The content is pronunciation for that. You understand? So through listening is input. What is inputted? What is input? The input, you put something new, you give something new, that's vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. With reading as input skill, we do only two, vocabulary and grammar. We don't do the pronunciation part comes only through by way of listening, and the learners will get to hear. The output skills are speaking and writing. After administering listening as a class, and we also talk about vocabulary, we also talk about rules of grammar, we also talk about pronunciation if there are new words, all right? And then using that material, the content, we have to also structure the output. If the output is not done based on the input becomes a waste of time, and it's a futile exercise. Therefore, language teachers must have this knowledge of what the meaning of teaching a language, and of the four skills, the input skills and the output skills. What is input? What is input is vocabulary. What is input is grammar. What is input is pronunciation. If the input skill is listening, if the input skill is reading, and the notion of pronunciation is absent. Now, I have another question to raise. And are you ready? Please unmute your mics. The question is, what do we do with language? Organizers, I request you to unmute all the mics, and I want to gather. Yeah. Everybody?
Participants, please unmute yourselves and answer to sir's question.
Right. Darshan Sahu?
Good
Mr.
morning, sir.
Darshan?
Yes, sir. Good
morning, Darshan.
Yes.
Yeah, what's the meaning of, what do you do with a language, Darshan?
So,
any language, Odia, Bengali, or Sambalpuri.
okay.
If you think it's a language, it
Yes,
should
sir.
be.
Language, I think, sir, is the means of communication. Okay.
I know. What do we do with language? That's right. It's a means of communication. Right. But we don't communicate only with language. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
Darshan? We also communicate with our hair, communicate
Yes,
with our dress, communicate with our many things.
Yes,
But let's not say that language is the only means of communication.
okay, sir.
But leave it apart. What do we do with language? Darshan.
Sir, may I, sir? May I?
Who's that?
It's
Deepak?
Deepak, sir. Sir.
Deepak, please.
Yes, sir. It's a medium of expression, any kind of expression.
Okay, Deepak says medium of expression. Fine, I know. But this is
Can
not
I,
the
sir?
only medium of expression. Yeah.
Yes.
Can I, sir?
Any other?
Can I, sir?
Who is that? Kishore.
Sir, I am Krishan, sir.
I'm Kishore.
Kishore, please go on.
Good morning, sir. I'm Kishore. Hello.
Yeah, I'm listening, Kishore.
Language, sir, as well as to produce and use word and sentence to communicate language acquisition involving structure, rule, and representation, sir.
All right. So that's what do we do with language, right? We use grammar to communicate. We do pronunciation to communicate. Okay. Any other Chitra?
Can I, sir? Yes, sir. I'm Chitra Sharma, sir.
Please go
Yes,
ahead.
Sir, language helps us to express our wishes, express our feelings, and like, dislike, and any other like idea, sir.
All right. Okay. Wishes, feelings, likes, dislikes. So that's what we do with language, right? But I'm looking at the answers that come specifically from language teachers. Any other? What do we do with language?
Well, I do play with language. I can play with language. I can, yeah.
Lingraj says, I play with language. Lingraj, very nice.
I can eat with language. I can draw a pencil sketch with language. I can do many things, not many things. I do everything with language. If I'm
all right. So that's actually these answers are all acceptable considering the fact that I mean, in the context where we are not speaking to language learners, we are not speaking to language teachers. But this context requires a different set based on which our classes will have to be steered. That's why I asked this question. It's okay. That's what we do with language, no doubt. But English teachers' answers to these questions, that's what. Kirtana, I can see Holy Mary.
Sir, I have an idea.
Who is Kirtana? Kirtana?
Hello.
There is one participant by name Kirtana, Professor. Okay, who is the other one?
Yes, sir. Language. Hello. Can
Who's
you?
this?
Yes, sir. I am Malay Bag.
Go ahead. Malaya Pag.
Actually, language is a medium.
Yeah, that's right.
That that means that help us to exchange the idea, feelings through many different things. It may be that means in writing way or any sound or any other things. It may that means it interlink the emotions and feelings and ideas.
Okay, I understand, Malay. Yeah. I do not want to answer from definitions, answers of philosophy. Very simple, ordinary answer as to what we do with language. Farah.
Yes.
At least
Sir,
finally there is a lady participant. Very good. Yeah.
Sir, we get our things done from language.
Okay, we get our things from language. Okay.
Are
Get our
completed through
things from language. But you also do things with language, right? Not only getting done, we also do it. Get our things using language. All right. Are you an English teacher
without
too?
language, we cannot make anyone to do anything.
All right. So you always want others to do things. So we can't do any of these things get done in the absence of language. All right. Any other? Otherwise, I'll stop here. Well, you can mute all the mics, Mr. Organizer. And now Anil, you wanted to say something? Anil has kept his phone on. Anil Kumar. Mr. Anil, okay. Anil also is muted. Now, this is an important question, distinguished teachers of English. I think mainly from Odisha. What I see is that, yes, we do these things as Darshan, Deepak, Kishore, Chitrasen, Lingraj, Malay, Farah. Yeah, we do all those, but they don't come to help us in understanding our work as language teachers, because you got to prepare a learning lesson. Not like this. You will not be able to structure any lesson if you use any of these things that you've just, it's a medium, it's ideas, feelings. And if you say that we are not philosophers to exchange ideas on daily basis. The last idea in social sciences was Karl Marx, new idea. The last idea in linguistics is from Chomsky. And after that, we are just debating whether the ideas that have come from there are useful or useless, or meaningful or meaningless, or valid or invalid. This kind of discussion, academic discussion is going on. We don't every day exchange feelings. If you say, I exchange feelings every day, people will take you to be very, very loose, very emotional. We are not always. But even if they are meanings to this question, they won't help us in structuring a language. And what we do with language, for English teachers, the set has to be different. The set is like this. What do we do with language? With language, these are the things that we do. We greet in the language, using language. Right? How do you greet in Odia?
We do namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. Namaskar. You also ask a question.
Yes.
Right. So we greet using language. So you have to teach that. Greeting. But if you say, I exchange ideas and feelings, how do you teach that? It's a very vague concept. We need a concrete answer to these questions. And on the basis of the answer, you can structure your lesson, structure your learning plan, and prepare materials or draw materials from the authentic sources to teach greeting. And what else do we do with language? we introduce ourselves. So therefore, we also have to teach how to introduce oneself. Introduce myself, introduce yourself, introduce the other, introduce a topic, introduce a concept, introduce an idea, introduce a situation, introduce a person. For example, you always have these college functions. Today also, for instance, Sudhamshu, first things are first, he said, let me introduce the guest speaker. All right. Then after that, Dr. Ashok introduced the concept of listening. So if there is introduction that we do, we introduce ourselves, who you are, who I am, I introduce, if I happen to be part of a group. If I'm master of ceremonies, MC, anchor person of a particular program, I'll introduce the program first. Then I introduce the people who have come to be part of the program. So introduction is things that we do with language, and we must also learn to teach that. We must know how to do it. Questioning and answering. Then there must be answer. So questioning and answering is what we do using language. So therefore, we must also teach. There are different types of questions. There are police questions. There are polite questions. There are khaki questions. There are khadi questions. We must make them part of it. Instructions, what to do, what not to do in the class. Instructions at a particular program, we always have instructions. So we must also teach context-bound instructions, and that we do with language. That's why we've got to teach directions. We explain, we describe, apologize, complimenting, elaboration, suggestion, requesting, asking and giving permissions, eliciting, elicit answer. What's this? What's that? Now, before we start the class, I would like to know what happened in the last class. Can someone come up to give us a gist? So elicitation, agreeing, disagreeing, feedback. So these are the things: narration, summary, inform, instruct, illustrate. So these are the things that we do. They are in sociolinguistic terms called functions of language. We today, in our language teaching and learning activities, we use functional approach, functional communicative approach to language, not merely grammar and grammar translational. And if you are talking about functional approach to language, so your lessons are to be guided principally, predominantly, pivotally by these functions. If you, for instance, if you're getting into a first class, now what are you going to teach? You're going to teach only how to greet in the language. And this greeting is not there in all other languages. For instance, in rural Odian, I don't think there is any greeting. When they meet with each other in the morning, the villagers, they don't greet with each other. But it's there in English. So that becomes cross-cultural. So you've got to emphasize that English people greet with each other in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and also they also use certain expressions when they part. And that expression should also be taught. Now, if you're having your first class, you're going to have your first class, you've got to teach greeting. So how many types of greeting? Usually 3 types of greeting. What are those? Formal greeting, informal greeting, and semi-formal greeting. Unfortunately, in English, we don't have informal greeting. And we've got only two types of greeting. One is formal greeting. So formal place is our classroom. Good morning, teacher. I prefer happy morning, teacher. Good morning is England, because that weather conditions must be very good. So you wish them to have a very good morning, because it's a cold country. You're wishing a very warm morning. And I think the world today requires happiness. So you please start wishing each other happy morning, everybody. Happy afternoon, everyone. It's a very formal greeting. And in the semi-formalness, hi, everyone. Hello. There's nothing called informal, because it is informal, there's no greeting. English, generally, we don't use in the informal sense. We use only in two senses. One is the formal sense, and another is the semi-formal. So you also have to structure your lesson using these language functions. When you prepare your lesson plan, prepare your session plan, prepare any plan of learning, the first thing that you write on the top of the sheet is function, greeting, function, self-introduction, introducing the other, introducing the second person. So these things will have to be there. So second question is also comfortably answered. All English teachers hereafter, when someone asks a question, what do you do with language? I greet in the language. I introduce myself in the language. I elicit in the language. I instruct in the language. I give directions in the language. I explain things in the language. I describe a situation. I describe a place. I describe a person. Because police language is always description. Describing a convict, describing an offender, describing a thief, describing a vehicle if it is lost, describing the panchnama that they conduct is all description. When I visited, how is the scene of crime? Crime scene has to be reconstructed using language. So these are the things, everybody, that you should say when you face a question as to what do you do with the language. We do the same things using Odia as well. All right. But there may be certain speech acts which are not there in Odian, but they're English, which are there in English, not there in Odian. That becomes difficult. And teachers will have to expend more time and emphasize that, reinforce that, repeat that, because certain things are not there. For example, complimenting as a language function is always there in the English, but not there in Odia. That's why when you teach compliment or you give compliment, Lingraj, you have a very nice shirt. Lingraj will not immediately say thank you. He will talk about the shirt, where he bought it, how many years ago he bought it. In fact, in his opinion, that's not a nice shirt. So giving compliment in a pan-Indian expression is inviting argument, because complimenting as a speech act is not there in our Indian languages. In the English, for instance, hey, John, nice shirt. John will not talk about describe the quality of the shirt, cost of the shirt, the how many years it is old. He'll say, thank you. That's all. Right. So these are the things that language teachers must remember when they talk about language and when they start structuring a lesson. Next question. Why do we listen? What is the role of listening? That's what I'm trying to say. Very important. Without listening, without administering listening as a skill to the learners will not be able to learn any language. It is also medically proved that those who lack listening ability, that is, those who are physiological problems, those who cannot listen, those who don't have the capacity to listen, faculty of listening, will also be dumb. Deaf people are invariably dumb. They won't be able to read, they won't be able to write, because listening is the precursor, forerunner of other skills. Many people ask me, many learners and teachers, teacher education courses, that, why don't my learners learn the language? What is the problem? I say the problem is because we teach using writing as a skill. In fact, writing is a literary skill, not a language learning skill. We teach the alphabet of the language. When a learner has to learn a language, we take a slate and write on it A, B, or take a notebook, and in the book using pencil, you write A, B, C, D, and ask them to rewrite or overwrite if it's a slate. That's the unnatural way of teaching a language and learning a language. That's why it takes ages for our learners to learn it. But the basic, you all agree with me, that you learned, all of you, your mother tongue, Odia, your dear Odia. How did you learn? Not by way of writing the letters of the Odia alphabet. You were exposed to the language. You learned, you listened to the language from your mothers and others for a considerable time before you started saying it. So therefore, basic skills are listening and speaking. And that after that, people are admitted to school to learn reading and writing. And for centuries, people happily communicated using language, not by learning the literary way, but learning the natural way. The natural way is to listen first and speak next. And if you don't listen to the language, you can't speak. Now, why do we listen? I want to tell you why we've got to listen using the story of, can you tell me who this guy is? Can you get to see the picture, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
Nimai, sir.
Sorry?
Nimai, sir.
Nimai,
Yes,
who
sir.
is this here? This picture?
Tarzan.
Tarzan. Yeah. Okay. Any other? Have any other? Some people can say Mowgli and all, but I want you to understand with Nimai that it's Tarzan. The story of Tarzan is like this. I'm sure you know about the story, right? I'll tell you this story of Tarzan. Tarzan is not, I think it's a folk tale. It's a legend, not only available in English culture, but it's there across the world cultures in different names. But the gist is the same. Those who watch the film Tarzan, it's also there in Hindi, Tarzan, where this lady Kimi Akhtar was introduced. Those who watch the film Tarzan or read the story of Tarzan are aware of the fact that the hero of the film was rescued from the lap of his dead parents by a gorilla couple and was raised by them in a jungle that had no human contact. So that's the crisis act. As he grew up, he was able to emit the distinctive sounds of the gorilla and could communicate with them and other gorillas fairly well in what is known as gorilla's language. And Tarzan, very well, he spoke gorilla language very well. Now, what's the conclusion? On the basis of this reading, we can say that Tarzan is able to communicate orally with the gorillas because he has been exposed to gorillas' language for years. Please make a note of this word, exposure. Tarzan spoke gorillas' language because he has been exposed to gorillas' language for years. That's the comprehension we have so far made on the basis of this story. Now, go to the other part of the story. You can see here Tarzan and with a lady here. After a while, a young woman, the leading lady of the story, steps in. She's rescued by Tarzan from the attack of a wild animal. In return for rescuing her, she says, "Thank you." To which the young man doesn't know how to respond. The lady persists in communicating with him in English, which Tarzan is unable to catch and respond. He keeps looking at her with eyes empty. She continues talking to him in English, pointing a finger at herself, she says, "Jane, Jane, Jane." Then, pointing at Tarzan, she says, "John, John, John." Finger at herself, Jane, and finger at Tarzan, John, John. Jane does this act repeatedly, saying Jane while pointing a finger at herself, and John with finger pointing at Tarzan. After some time, holding a finger at herself, Jane looks at Tarzan expectantly, thinking that Tarzan would say what she had been teaching him. She had been listing out. Tarzan, Jane, comes the sound from Tarzan's mouth. Pleased with this response, she points her finger at Tarzan and looks at him with the same expectation. John, says Tarzan effortlessly. Now, what is that we have so far points to ponder on the basis of this story? What do we learn? What have we learned on the basis of story? People, can you please answer? What have you understood from this story of Tarzan and how Tarzan got a name and was able to say what his name was? And also, he knew the name of the girl who was giving him exposure to language. Any other participants? There are quite a good number. Bhaktaram Sahu, Doctor or Mr. Mr. Ram? Bhakta?
Yes, sir. Namaskar.
What have you understood from the story of Tarzan? Are you there with us?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What have you understood, sir? Points to ponder. Because I gave the story to drive a point very strongly across.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What's that, Mr. Bhaktaram?
Yes, sir.
Ram Bhaktan,
So,
I think your name is.
Yes, sir. But only in name, sir, not in nature.
I know. All right.
Yeah.
What are the points? What have you understood from this story?
Sir, the story says that language isn't a barrier here. When you practice a lot, or when you are in that surrounding of a particular language, you can get it. You can get it by practicing or by observing the people.
Okay, by practicing you can learn. Right, right. Wonderful. Amrita? Amrita? Amrita, what are you trying to do? Amrita? Okay, Mallika, Dr. Mallika. Dr. Mallika.
Ma'am, please
She raised
unmute
her hand.
yourself. Yeah, she has raised her hand.
I know, she has.
Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself. You're muted.
Okay, Ramachandra. Mr. Anil.
Yes, sir. Happy morning.
Happy morning, Anil. Please go ahead. What have you understood from the story of
Yes,
Tarzan?
sir, as I understood, the repetition is necessary for a new learner of language. What I understood from the story is.
Repetition is essential. All right, wonderful. Fine, fine. Very nice. Repetition is essential for Anil. And Dr. Mallika also raised hands. Mallika. Okay. Dr. Jagannath Patnaik.
Sir, human mind is programmed to learn a language.
Human mind is programmed, but does it say that?
Sir?
Does the story say that?
Yes, sir. A human being can learn a language by listening.
Your understanding, Dr. Patnaik, is
Sir.
not from the story, it is from your earlier reading.
Sir, I think, sir, by learning, we can learn. By listening to a language, we can learn.
Yeah, that is what you should say. That listening is key to learning a language. Without listening, you can't learn a language. Fine, fine. Deepak?
Yes, sir. I have got a different notion for this. Language is not merely confined with the letters or words. Instead, it can be through signs and symbols and gestures as well. The way Tarzan also did. I hope.
No. That's what you're understanding. That's a misplaced understanding in a way, because it's all about listening. Because she listened, she spoke, and the other party listened, and that's how. Okay, anyway, different understandings of the same. Shibani Badai.
Hello, sir.
Reni. Yeah, who's this?
Sir, this is Malika here.
Yeah, Malika, please go ahead. What have you understood from the story, Malika? Dr. Malika.
Sorry to listen, sir. And the story actually tells us that communication plays a very important role in acquiring a language. And Tarzan, though he was not acquainted with the language that Jane was speaking, she was, just by listening to her voice, he could acquire it for some, at least, though not immediately, he could respond to her. And gradually he would have picked it up.
Okay, okay, because there's some
So the listening
internet
skill is
issue
very
here.
important, I feel.
Sorry, Dr. Malika.
The listening skill is very, very important to acquire a new language.
All right, that's the very important point. Listening skill is very, very important to
Yes, sir.
develop other skills. You can say you have seen it there that he listened to her speak for a while.
Yeah.
Then there was input, listening, and followed by that there is output of speaking. Without input, output is impossible. And even if you try, Dr. Malika, you can't teach the output without giving the input.
Very
all right.
true, sir.
Wonderful. That's the. There is one more person, Viveka. 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 Hello. Thank you, Malika, Dr. Malika, and others. And now we can stop here. And please unmute all the mics and let's go over to see what we could have learned or should have learned but did not. But the story aims at giving an understanding of the pivotal role that listening plays in developing language. And what are those? Exposure is the key to learning a language. Tarzan was sufficiently exposed to oral communication of Jane, and Jane spoke to Tarzan. My name is Jane. Your name is John, Jane, John, Jane, and enough exposure was given. So exposure is the key to learning a language. Without getting the ears trained, nobody can learn a language. That's why deaf people are also dumb, lack the ability to communicate orally because input is absent. So ear training is essential. And don't get into the class and say, now, come on, speak. And that's a futile exercise. You're asking for an output skill without giving the input. Input is essential. Those who are deaf are also invariably, unmistakably dumb. To be able to speak a language, one must first get exposed to the language. Without being exposed, nobody can use language. Please choose one of the statements. Okay, please put all the mics active, Mr. Organizer. Choose one of the statements given below. The statements are like this. Linguistic communication, that is language communication, is best learned only when it is taught by young ladies or heroines. Or listening is the key to learn a language. Which one is the answer from the story that we have just got exposed to?
Listening is the key to learn a language.
All right, that's the one. And let's not look for this, that only glamorous people can teach language or young girls can teach language. It's not the one that you should concentrate on. The understanding is that listening is the key to learn a language. Therefore, every day as language teachers, when you get to the class, first see that there is sufficient exposure, ear training. Exposure means ear training given to your learners. So that's the role of listening. And role of listening is very, very monumental in trying to institute language ability among our learners. What are the sub-skills of learning? Language is a skill-based activity, and some are input skills, some are output skills. Listening is an important skill, and that is key for language development. But what are the sub-skills of the skill of listening? Listening for gist. When you listen to a story, for instance, we would like to know what the story is all about. Listening for gist. Listening for specific information. Sometimes, for instance, if you are listening to cricket commentary, you would be interested in who is playing and at what stage is the game. Listening for details. If you are listening for something, so you will all be listening for detailed information. For example, you are listening to an announcement at the railway station, or listening to announcements at an airport, for example. You will listen for details as to which flight is going where and at which gate and what time. And listening for facts and figures. If you are listening to the information about the results of a lottery ticket, and you will always be concentrate. So the situation decides the sub-skill. Sometimes when you listen, you may have to listen for all these things. It's not that these sub-skills are watertight compartments. And in the same announcement, for example, some people might listen for specific information, and some people might listen for details, right? So these are some of the things that we do while listening, for example. Now, how do you plan a session, a model session plan? I said that first is the input skill. Input skill, is it listening or reading? Second, skills. So sub skills I have already said. What are you aiming at in that class? Then the output skill. Output skill, what are the output skills that you want to? Then very important. In fact, I want you to put this function above. Item number 1 should be language function. Instead of 4, I request you to take it, put it above and put it under item number 1 as the language function. Then vocabulary. What vocabulary are you introducing in that listening session, in that input session? Then what grammar are you introducing or reinforcing the grammar rules that had already been taught? We don't do everything every day, something new. If you do that, and it becomes very difficult to hold a class. And if you do something new, maybe 1 or 2 new words in a session, and that 1 or 2 new words in that session will have to be staged on in the context of the words that they have already known, from known to unknown. Pronunciation. What activities are you going to conduct? Because it is a communicative language teaching, CLT, strengthened by functional approach. So individual work, pair work, role plays, group work, project work, dramatization. Okay, so these are the works that you want to. Materials required for the session. You must know what materials, what worksheets, what handouts you're going to give, and what's the duration of the class. So accordingly, you've got to plan your session. Once you do that, you need to have the structure of the session. Every session has 3 stages. Pre-learning activity, while learning activity, and post-learning activity. Pre-learning, so you must give a gist of what it is going to be. And while listening, if it is a listening class, so what is the content going to be? And what are the things that the learner is expected to do while listening? And what are the post-listening activities? So must have clear-cut idea as to what you as a teacher are going to do in the class. While listening, for example, if your input is listening, what are the things that they should do while listening? Now, do you think, please put the mics on, Mr. Organizer, and the question is, do you allow your learners to take down notes while listening?
Yes, sir, I have unmuted them. They can answer now.
Yeah, Subhranshu says he has unmuted all the mics. Please come up. Do you allow your learners to take down notes while listening to the audio in the listening class, or while listening to you as you speak? Do you allow? Bhavya? Bhavya? Lipi? Manmohan Mishra?
Hello, sir.
Manmohan?
Yes, sir. Morning.
Do you allow your learners to take down notes while listening to the class, in the listening class?
We are insisting, but students are not usually taking notes.
But do you allow them?
Yeah, allow them.
In the listening class, you allow them notes. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Very good. That's the answer from Manmohan Mishra. And Panchanan, do you allow your learners to take down notes in your listening class? Panchanan is online, but I don't think he's with us. Panchanan? Viveka, do you allow? Okay, Deepak Verma has raised his hand. Deepak.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We certainly allow students to take notes while listening, That
Wonderful.
is the basic thing of the listening classroom, sir.
Wonderful. Very nice answer.
Yes, yes, sir.
Who is answering?
Yes, sir. I will also allow the students to answer, take down the notes. Sir, I am
Wonderful.
Suresh
Kumar also allowed.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. Very nice.
Yes, sir. I will also allow them to imagine the next session, next part of the lesson.
Okay.
Yes,
Fine.
sir.
So, but you allow them to take down notes, because I remember many times it is don't take notes while listening. Because in the listening test, you're not allowed. I think TOEFL test some years ago did not allow the participants to take down notes, because if you don't allow take down notes, which means you are not giving, you are not teaching listening. You are teaching memorization.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
You have to allow.
Yes, sir.
Because
Yes,
it is
sir.
a pedagogic activity. It is
Okay,
not
sir.
a memorization. If you are not practicing how to memorize, how to remember. That's not in a language learning situation. You must allow your participants to take down notes. That's a very, very important point I wanted to. That's why I stopped here. While listening, we must allow participants. What are the participants to do? The learners will listen to the audio or to the teacher. While listening, they must be allowed to take down notes. They write down the words that they hear for the first time, or old words also, whatever they hear, sentences, structures, whatever they want to, they can take down. Audio material must be appropriate to their level. That's very important. You cannot bring material which is below their level or above. You must have a complete gauge in understanding of the level of the learners, and accordingly, the material has to be pitched. The content chosen must be non-controversial, which means should not, try to cause friction, hurt the sentiments, religious sentiments, cultural sentiments of the people. It must be culture neutral and gender neutral as well. Please understand. Should be. Choose comprehensible input. Do you remember this concept? It comes from Krashen. Krashen is a theory of input, comprehensible input hypothesis. Comprehensible input means the learner must be able to understand, and don't choose to challenge the learners and their learning ability. Use neutral pronunciation. We don't have to use British or American. We should not actually. We should use neutral English. Neutral English is a variety which doesn't have the influence of mother tongue. For example, Indian newscasters, newsreaders, usually English newscasters use neutral pronunciation. They don't speak like the British nor like the Americans, and English teachers should also aim at becoming a neutral English user, where the influence of mother tongue is not heavily there on their oral communication. So while listening activities, this pre and post listening. So in the pre-listening and post-listening, you must have some activities based on vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, and also comprehension. Now, for this class, I have a session. I don't know if there is time. Organizers, is there enough time?
Yes, sir. We can continue.
A sample session. How does it look? First is input, sub-skills. Function is introduction. Sub-skills, listening for details, theme, main ideas. Input is listening. Function is introduction. Output skill is speaking. Grammar is past tense, not past tense, past tense. Vocabulary, new words, synonyms, antonyms. In the synonymy, antonymy is a strategy that language teachers use to increase the vocabulary of the learners. Pronunciation of new words, past markers, contractions, activity, pair or group work, materials, worksheet, duration, as much as this session permits. Now, how do you execute? How do you execute? In the pre-listening, for example, we must give the details of what is in store for the learners in the form of audio material, listening material. Now, who is this guy? We can flash or we can distribute a picture to all the participants and ask them to find out who this is. They can either use, pair work or individual and use their gadgets to find out who this is. They can also use Google, run Google or any search engine to know this is. This is John Legend. So therefore, the audio that you're going to listen to is all about John Legend. Who is he? He's a pop musician. Pop is a short form of popular musician. Usually, the American English songs are called pop songs or popular musician. John Legend. Now, what are the words that they will face in the accomplishments is a new word, and we can also write them on a piece of paper and circulate to a group, and the group will have to. So every teacher must have the list of new words that the learners are going to learn afresh in this listening class, and chits can be distributed to groups of people, and they are asked to find out the meaning. They can use resources such as internet resources, and they can also use dictionaries to find out the meaning, or teacher can also flash. So these are the meanings of accomplishment. So what I'm trying to tell you is that teacher must have a, sorry, apologies, because I've been speaking continuously. Teacher must have an idea, clear idea as to what new words are going to be introduced. So teacher can devise a strategy of introducing them. She can directly introduce using material like this, or the teacher can write these individual words on pieces of paper, and that paper can be distributed to the learners, and learners will find out the meaning. And once a particular space of time is 5 minutes, at the end of 5 minutes, teachers will say, what's the meaning of piano? So the people who got the chit of piano would be able to say what piano is. Similarly, Korea. So these are the meanings. Pictures can also be shown. Similarly, words such as concert. So all the difficult, what I'm trying to say that in the pre-teaching activity, the teacher must give the general idea of the material that is going to be heard by the learners, and what the new words that will be there part of the audio material, and the new words must be pre-taught directly. But since we are talking about functional and their communicative approach using group work or a pair work, each word must be written on a piece of paper, distributed to the pair, and pair will be given sufficient time to find out what the meanings of those words are. In fact, they can be allowed to walk into the library. If they have gadgets, mobile phone, and all that, they are also allowed to use them. So they must know the meaning of these words. If they don't know the meaning of these words, they'll fail to comprehend, because at the end of the class, you'll have to have a comprehension exercise. Now, what I'm trying to do, this is the pre-teaching, right? So there are quite a few words that I have with you, and then now while listening is what we will be concentrating, and I'm going to play. I don't know if it is possible to play. Let me try to play the audio that I have with me. And followed by that, please wait, everyone. Yes, I'm playing this John Legend. Please check if you are able to hear. Can you hear me?
No, sir.
No, sir, your screen is freezed, actually.
It's all frozen.
Yeah,
right?
you can stop sharing and share it again, I think. Maybe that can help.
I think it's not. Is it playing now? How do I play this?
No, sir, you can
I
stop sharing and then you can share the.
I think. Okay. Oh, my screen is gone, is it?
Yes, sir.
But how are you able to listen?
No, sir, we're not able to listen, sir.
No, but what happened to me? 1 second, please.
Yes, sir.
I'm also learning. How do I?
Sir, in the top, there must be an option to stop share.
All right. Yeah. New share, resume sharing. Where is it? You got it now?
No, sir.
All right. Please hold on.
Sir, shall I do it from this side? You're sharing?
Yeah, why not?
Okay, yeah. So you can share once again now. I have stopped the screen. You can share your screen once again, sir.
Yeah, got it?
Yes, sir. Now we can see your screen.
In it, I wanted to play, this one.
Yes, sir.
Is it playing?
No, sir.
How do we play?
Okay, sir. I have an idea. You have to stop sharing once again. And while sharing, you have to click on the share with sound. There's an option.
All right. Okay.
No, sir. Just a minute. Just a minute. Yeah, you have to come to Zoom again. And then you have to, when you're sharing, just tick on the box, share with sound. There should be an option.
Box share with sound. Is there some box? I can't see it. Stop video, security, participant chart, share screen.
Yes, sir. When you click on share screen, you will be able to get an option as share with sound.
It's not there.
Or else, sir, you can send the audio in WhatsApp to me or to someone so that we can play from this side.
How do I do that? Because I don't have your. Wait, let's see. Link the session. Where is the session? Shift to select multiple windows. I don't know what it is. Have I stopped sharing? First of all, you please tell me.
Yes, sir, you have stopped sharing. Sir,
I have stopped sharing. In that case, please hold on.
Say, when you come to Zoom and you click on share screen, on the extreme left-hand side in the corner, after clicking on sharing screen, share for sound. One option comes.
Share sound. Okay. It's there. It's there. Now.
Yeah, now it will be done.
I have to. Where do I share? Now, please hold on. iTunes. Okay.
Yeah, we can see your screen now.
Can you?
Yeah.
All right. In that case. Where are these? Recently added. Please hold on. I want John Legend to come up. Please hold on, sir. Desktop. Can you? Oh my goodness.
Yes, sir. I'm stopping your sharing. Just a minute.
I want John Legend.
Yeah, you can share once again John Legend's.
All right. Please hold on.
Yes, sir.
Computer audio. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh.
Hello, Subhranshu.
Sir.
Sir, namaste. This is Panchanan Duria.
Yeah, Panchanan, please tell me.
I'm extremely sorry, sir, because I have come to my home university as a research person.
Yeah, I know. I've heard about it. Don't worry. No problem.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, sir. Thank you so much. And I'm extremely sorry about my absence. I missed your
No,
session.
it's okay, Panchanan. You are on an important task.
Sir. Thank you so
We
much,
are
sir.
trying to learn some things here. I don't know whether we succeed. Let us see whether we will going to succeed.
Subhranshu is there, sir, to
Resume
help you out.
share. New resume share. No, not possible. So new. What have I shared now?
The screen of John Legend is visible.
Is it visible?
Yeah. 4 files are there.
But it's not working. I don't know.
Okay.
Try to click. Try to do the right click, sir. So that
I think that share, right?
There may be some options of playing.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. But I can't see John Legend here. That's why I feel it's the
But
one. This is Chrome,
see.
Micro Word. Word. 1 second, please. Let me again go back to what I can do.
Yes, sir. I've stopped your sharing.
Yeah,
Sir,
please
you can
stop.
Yeah. Sir, you can do one thing. You can share your entire screen. That might help.
Yeah, let's see.
Yeah, with sound. So that we will hear.
You stopped sharing it right now,
yes,
right?
Stopped.
iPhone, iPad, Microsoft, Chrome. This is the one. But it's asking, please restart your audio sharing application, such as the media player. I don't know. Please hold on.
Yes, sir.
Zoom audio device. I don't know where it is. Anyway, that's I think we can stop here by, I'll give you that what I'm trying to say through this audio is that there is a
Yes, sir. Your screen is visible now, sir.
I know, but this is not visible. It is asking me to do some things, that's why, which I am unable to do.
Oh.
You can't hear, no?
No, we can't hear.
That's the problem. It's asking me to do some things for which it is also asking me to make some changes to the computer. I think I'm unable to do it.
So we can share it afterwards in the group, no problem.
After?
Afterwards in the participants group, we can share the audio if you...
That's right. So what I'm trying to say that any listening session will have to have something called pre-listening activity, while listening activity, post-listening activity. In the pre-listening, the new words and will have to be discussed prior to playing, because those words are very important, very pivotal. That actually the crux of the comprehension that has to follow while listening to your video. So therefore, and while listening, they can also take down notes, and which can be used to do the language learning exercises later. For instance, comprehension of the content, followed by exercises on the new words that were already introduced. And on the basis of that, we can, in the pre-listening, they will have only the direct meaning of the words. In the post-listening, we can also give them antonyms and synonyms of the same word, activities, and learn grammar activities. And also followed by that, it is also the output skill of speaking. Since its introduction, the audio, I'm sure you would have had a better idea of what I was doing here if I had access to my audio files to show you, but unfortunately it's not working that way. And now we can based on the audio, based on the new vocabulary given, we can always conduct what is called the output skills of introducing somebody, and such things could be part of our thing. Now today, what did we do in this class is first we raised very simple things that we have done, because I know this is a kind of an interactive and workshop kind of a session. By eliciting a lot of things from you, I've been trying to give a perspective and give a very strong view that learning language is completely dependent on the skill of listening, and listening is the key to develop other skills of speaking or writing or reading even so. And no teacher should ignore the role of listening in language development. First, we asked a question as to what it means to be learning a language, and we understood and we gathered, we elicited answers, and we had a brainstorm of sorts to say that learning a language is learning to listen, learn to speak, learning to read, learning to write. After that, plus language elements such as vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Followed by that, we also asked questions as to what we do with language, and we understood that there are several functions, social functions, that we accomplish by way of using language. Then we said this elicitation is important for structuring language classes. First and foremost, the teacher must have an idea as to what the teacher is going to do in the class, what function the teacher is going to introduce or reinforce, and that reinforcement and introduction will have to happen with the listening as a skill. And there are procedure, pre-listening, while listening, and post-listening activity. Hope I made some sense, or to some, those who have already known, I would have helped to recall and their knowledge. And for those who are for the first time getting exposed to the role of listening, it's a good learning experience. And that's all I have to share with you, because we can only begin and end logically, and Rome is not built in a day. This is part of something called role of listening in language development. Now, session is open for questions, because we have got only about 10-15 minutes. Deepak.
What a mesmerizing session it was. Highly interactive, really wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. I'm thinking that we all must have been benefited with the session by the respected sir. Mr. Subhranshu, kindly start with question answer session, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Deepak sir. And thank you so much, Professor K. Venkat Reddy, for the wonderful and amazing and enlightening session that we had with you. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand so that you directly ask those questions to sir from the participants, or else you can drop in the chat box and we can read it out for you. Anyway, it is possible. Please. It's open for everyone. Anyone who wants to ask a question, please raise your hand.
Can I ask a question, Mr. Subhranshu?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Please, Deepak sir.
Sir, despite knowing the fact that listening is an important aspect of any language learning. Teachers are well aware of this fact, but when it comes to practical teaching in a classroom, sometime or most of the time, in fact, we become, incapable or fail to implement, to teach listening to the students. At some point of time, we ourselves are lacking to take up this skill. So did you get my question, please?
Yeah, you see, yeah, I'm trying to reframe your question from what you've said is that although we are aware of the fact that listening is important, but we are unable to do it. That's right. It has to get into the language learning materials. So when the materials, at the level of material production, there should be enough space for listening, and paragraph wise, at least as teachers, you should not say that earlier, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, or 10 years ago, teachers used to raise this question. We don't know how to use audios. Where do we get audios to use this? You don't have to worry about it now, because you take your mobile, there is a textbook, paragraph wise, you can record using your own voice and you can play. It's an adult class, for example, it's a graduation level, and you would have, I'm sure many classes have had their own WhatsApp group, and you can also record that particular paragraph listening material. You could share in the class, ask them to listen, and followed by that, you can do this, comprehension questions, Deepak.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
It is also systemic problem of the system. System must also come.
Sir.
And government is not something different. Government is us. Government is Lingaraj Pradhan. Government is Boy. Government is Chitra Sen, Deepak. Now you've reached a stage where you could produce your own textbooks. So when you produce your textbook at that stage itself, a lot of brainstorm should happen as to how listening should be constructed and made part of the learning material. I think the problems will be solved, but let's not look for somebody to do it. Now, with the availability of a lot of digital gadgets at a throwaway price, I think we can really make a difference to the teaching learning activity that we are involved in. Yeah, Deepak.
Yes, thank you, sir. So, Branshu, can we have some other questions?
Yes.
Any other question?
I don't think we have anything else in the chat box. Anyone else who wants to ask?
Yes, I have a question. I have Lingaraj.
Yes, sir. Lingaraj, sir, please.
Yeah. Sir, how do you correlate loud reading to speaking? In one of in the session, you made this point, and loud reading can be speaking, but it can't be. Let's say if somebody is doing silent reading, that can be called as reading. But if someone is doing loud reading, how can it be speaking? Could you please throw some light?
Yeah, loud reading, teachers can do it. And that loud reading will cease to be reading and become a speech.
Okay. Let's say if I'm reading on my own, and if I'm trying to understand a concept or some line, some words, and if I do loud reading to understand that particular idea, can that be called speaking?
No, it is all how you are trained. It depends on Lingaraj.
All right.
If you're trained in the mold of loud reading as reading, you will continue to do it. But now that you know that reading means only silent reading, and you should encourage your learners from the beginning to get used to reading as silent reading.
All right.
Loud reading is not at all reading, it is speaking, in my view. It is like news reading, for example. Do you think they are reading it or they're speaking to you? They'll give you exposure to. Even if you do loud reading, that is an exposure for, it's considered listening for the learners.
Okay. For the learners, yeah. But if I'm trying to understand some concept on my own, but if I'm unable to do it in silent mode, and if I do speak out the words, the lines, and if I get to understand, so in that in that case, can that be called sticking, or can that be called in a
You
kind of
see, individuals, when they sit down, in a place and start reading loudly, I don't think they can actually finish reading at all. It takes a lot of time to read. In silent reading, you can read 10 words that are compared to reading loudly, only 1 or 2 words you could finish. So therefore, what I'm trying to say is that loud reading, why should you do it? If it is for teaching pronunciation, I can understand that you are giving them a model speech and others are listening. But if you're sitting in your own room, study room, and start reading loudly, what are you trying to do? I don't know.
There are different learning strategies because it is from my own experience. So that is why the question
Maybe that you like your own voice.
Maybe it's not just pronunciation, but there are some concepts when we try to understand. Sometimes we try to reproduce the words.
No, reproduce what? Somebody else, I understand. In the class, if you're reading, right?
All right. Okay.
I understand. But if you're reading a novel in your study and reading it loudly, what does it mean? You're tiring yourself. You will look for water. Your voice will go dry, and you will not read fast.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Chitrasan has a question in the chat box.
Yeah, he asks, how do I ask a question while listening?
Kirtana, assistant professor, they're all different. Input skills are reading and listening. Yeah, that's right. Great. Conversation is done. Exchange of information, sharing our opinions, emotions. Sir, network issues. I could not able to. Participants, please keep ourselves. There are no questions, I guess.
No, sir, in the last, in the last, towards the last.
I have a question. How do I ask question while listening? You can't ask a question while listening. You can only write down the question. What questions can you ask? Chitrasen, you cannot disturb others, right? You can write down the question and ask after the listening is over. It's not while listening. What questions do you have? Maybe individual questions which could be addressed after the listening is over.
Anyone else? Yeah. Anyone else?
I hope.
Ask a question.
I hope there is no more question. I hope.
Yeah.
See, listening is a very difficult skill itself. That is why we are not getting questions.
Right.
It's not easy not to question on a listening skill. So I hope you are done with the question answer session. I would request a chief guest to say something about today's session. Sir, please say a few words.
Me?
No, sir. Chief guest, sir. About the session.
Yeah. Ashok, Dr. Ashok.
Yes, sir. Dr. Ashok, sir, are you there?
I think Ashok sir is not here.
No, Ashok.
I think it's all right. No problem. He is introduced and has already gone away. It's okay.
Yes, sir. Yes,
that's all right.
So,
Thank you.
So finally, I would request Mr. Lingraj Pradhan to give vote of thanks. Mr. Lingraj, please proceed.
It's really a pleasure meeting Professor Venkat Reddy. Actually, you really graced us with the session and with your magnificent resources and talk. It is really mesmeric. We feel really honored for the ideas and for the resources that you share with us through your talk. We are really honored, Professor Venkat Reddy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the session, for this wonderful interactive session. We're thankful to Dr. Ashok Turuk as he graced the occasion being the chief guest, and in absentia, Sri Panchanandaria, who was supposed to be the host today because he got busy elsewhere. We are really sorry for that. And we are thankful to everybody, each and every participant today who made the session a great success and learning oriented. Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Professor Venkat Reddy, sir. Thank you for the session.
All right, sir. Thank you so much, sir, and all the participants who have joined the session to make it a great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye. All the
Thank
best
you,
for your mission. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.